Just on budget, I've been on Saturday batteries.
Are you ready? I'll go live.
We're Right, we are now live, I believe. So let's get on with the meeting. Well, my computer has just decided to say computer is no. Computer says no. Right, chair's opening remarks. If I can just, are we all ready? Let's pay attention. Class. The only thing I've got to say here is that we, as SCEA and the various festivals, this is something that I think the council should know ahead of the general public, so to speak. There have been a lot of concerns over the access to Market Street based on cost, based on traffic regulations and the like, also from KCC and potentially from DDC. We are having a fairly informal meeting with DDC on the 19th to try and understand what's going on. We've spoken to the facilities manager of DDC, who basically deals with activities in towns under DDC's remit. And they, going back to a meeting that we had back in May, where various changes to DDC's policies on festivals and charging and car parking and the like were discussed. This is being reviewed on the 19th. So at the moment, anything that comes from people saying what's happening on the 19th, we'll be able to come back with an understanding from DDC and from SCEA. So I think that's the only thing I can add as chairman's comments. If we can move on to apologies for absence received. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, sorry, we have apologies from Councillor Marie, from Councillor Black. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. So apologies for Councillor Marie.
Sorry, Councillor Marie, Councillor Morehouse, and Councillor Black.
Thank you very much. It might come up on. I can carry on with that while it's loading.
Yes, of course.
Thanks. If we can go for declarations of interest, please, to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Anything here? No? No, I think we can say a big no there. Thank you. And minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee, the previous one, to receive the minutes of the Townscape and Heritage held on Wednesday the 10th of July 2024, and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. Councillor Carter, can I call you Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, it's easier to say.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
To remember my name. Before you discuss any matter, I'd just like to propose them as being a correct set of minutes.
Councillor.
So I've just got one issue which I'll pick up under the agenda item around the Disability Access Strategy Working Group.
Yeah.
I'm just flagging that issue up. So the minutes aren't necessarily wrong. It's built on an assumption, but I think I'd like to change when we get to that point.
When we get to the point, so that's number 9.
So would you, sorry, will you be proposing a change because to agree with
Just reading the proposal. So what the minutes say is that we would review and revise the Heritage and Townscape Committee terms of reference. Well, that's true, but it's without authority to do that in terms of the overarching inclusion of the DASWG into this meeting. So we can do that. Sorry, I'm now getting to the detail of what I'm going to bring up later. We can do that, but it is on the intention that we do need to go to the town council, full town council
No,
meeting,
you're right.
to get that agreement before we can actually properly adopt it and integrate it into this committee.
You're right. Apologies. The resolution wasn't very clear, but there should have been a section after that that does
Subject
clearly
to-
state that it needs to
subject
be
to.
taken to. So I can.
Thank
Are
you.
you happy to
Thank
adopt the
you.
minutes
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
amendment?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
So if I can have a vote on accepting the minutes, Councillor Carter is proposing and Councillor Anderson is seconding. So can we take that as being? So we can have a show of hands for approving. We've got one abstention and 1, 2, 4, 5, 4. Thank you very much. Now, a review of the action log. We do have the action log and we also have the scoping documents. I don't know whether we're at the point where we can combine them. I proposed to Chloe, Town Council Assistant, that we combine the two because they do seem to cover much the same sort of thing. Rather than having two documents to go through, say, I think, at the time.
I have some work to do around the action log, so it's no problem at all for me to merge the two if everyone's happy.
If you're happy with that.
Yeah, I'd like to second that.
So, yeah, so we are going to merge the two. But for, at the moment, if we just go through the action log, then we can, where we come to the scoping documents, we can skip through as necessary. So if we can just go through the action log, do we have it on the email that came through?
Yeah, it should be in the
Attachment. Right, okay. If I just run through this fairly rapidly, I don't know if we all have access to the action log that was circulated.
No, but I can still get it. I can't get it.
As in the attachment,
No, it doesn't, don't worry about it.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I can provide you.
I can see it, but I can't print it off. It's like, anyway. Don't worry.
Right. Does anybody have anything to raise first off if they have been through the action log? Yes, Councillor Suka?
I was just going to mention on the first action, which is allocated to you.
Yes.
Simon, there is a activity that I'm undertaking with Councillor Morehouse and SCCG around discussing, and I've already approached DDC in advance of that, around introducing a mowing regime
Yes, we are.
within Sandwich, and I have got walkabout with parks and open spaces in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll meet with SCCG.
Yeah.
So I'm just broadly saying it sits firmly within this action, but it is a separate action that I'm progressing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it without anybody knowing who's doing it.
No, I wasn't aware of that going on. We've got the reference to the contract to complete restoring the plaques and the war memorial. The concern remains that one of the plaques is now, Chloe, you have a...
Yes, so we do have one quote which is circa £1,000 to correct that plaque. So I'm trying to now source further quotes.
So could I just add, just by having a conversation with Peter Barrow, who runs Barrow Antiques.
Oh, yeah.
When I was there, there was a lady, and sorry, I didn't pick up her name, but she's a gilder, a professional gilder, and has been all her life. And Peter said she was brilliant, but Peter's very outgoing. So there may be an opportunity there to find somebody else, so I can speak to and ask
Would
for
you?
her
That would
name.
be
Yes,
fantastic.
she lives locally, but she has spent her career in London.
Thank you. Councillor Skip.
I'd like to ask Chloe, what's the position if we can't find 3 quotes?
As long as we've attempted to find 3 quotes and there's been a reasonable search for it, if we can only have 2, then that's all there is.
Thank you very much. Town Clerk meeting with DDC to discuss street furniture to be reviewed in November, so we'll skip past that one. That's with regard to the bus shelter. Unless anybody has anything that they want to raise there.
May I ask?
Yes, yes, of course.
Do you have to wait until November to get the rubbish bins changed? Because they were not, those rubbish bins that you've got have been totally inadequate, and they weren't the original rubbish bins anyway. Are they all part of this street furniture? Because they're a disgrace.
So
Yes, of course, Councillor.
we had a meeting with ex-project manager who was very clear about, he knew about the bins being a requirement, but it was very clear that this was all about coming back in November with a figure that's available to then discuss individual component parts, some big, some small.
Wow. The rubbish bins are normal within the town. They had them there before, and the ones before were brilliant, but they were better than the ones that they suddenly
Not
put in.
defeating the line, I'm just repeating it.
I just think it's just not. It's a standard thing that we should have in the town, rubbish bins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stoke
Okay.
District Council.
I mean, can we add anything to that, Chloe? I think it is.
No, I think council should cover it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it comes as a bit of a package, that whole situation.
Yes.
It's not something where we can separate out any particular item.
And I was at the same meeting, and that's what the project manager said. He said, oh, we will come back at this time and day, and then we, as a collective, can consider the bus shelter, enclosure of the bus shelter, new waste bins that are adequate for the area that it's designated for. So
That was generally in relation to what budget was left, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
not going to be any more money. It was to calculate
Yes.
what was available
Yeah.
and then for us to prioritise.
yeah.
I completely understand that, but
Yeah.
my concern is that rubbish bins were included in the original documentation, in the original proposal. They were not those
Yeah,
rubbish
there were
bins.
changes.
So why and when did they decide? Did DDC decide to change them? Who did they say they were going? Who did they tell? And have they just stuck a couple of bins in there because they know they've got to? And that's what it looks like. So I don't really. I think my concern is that these are not something which you should then have to take out of the money that's left over. They should be actually supplied now, and they should have been supplied originally by DDC. It's not something extra. It's part of the project plan.
I mean, if you're happy, I'm happy to minute those concerns that then can be taken to the meeting. And
I would
those
like, yes
questions can be
please,
answered.
thank you.
Can we just clarify? We've got following discussion at November's Heritage and Townscape Committee meeting, 10/7/24 to be reviewed, November 20. Is there a separate meeting going ahead with DDC, or are they coming to the Heritage and Townscape
No,
meeting?
it's not linked to Heritage and Townscape. It's
So,
just that the meeting will be in November, and
Yeah.
then the Heritage and Townscape will review after that meeting has taken place.
right, so we will be presented with,
Yeah,
a fait accompli, so to speak.
this action will be reviewed, so how we go about that is up to you, how you would like to receive that information. I'm not sure what format that meeting will take, who will be involved. I'm not sure if I will be involved, so I would need to find that out. And
Or even if it's a meeting.
yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
This is so I can find that out actually. If that
Yes, if you could, can you circulate to Heritage and Townscape, members of the committee? Thank you. Just going on to not an agenda item, town clerk's discussions, DDC regarding vision for sandwich document. At this time, DDC have no capacity. Again, this is something we will keep town clerk updated. 11/09/24, 80.
So that's today. That's basically that I will revisit that again in December and see if there is because that's budget time to see whether or not they will have availability next year.
Right. And so the vision for the sandwich document. Right. So we're not. Is there anything that we can cover at the moment, or we're just basically waiting on that?
I believe that the last we heard is that DDC don't have capacity to move any element forward.
Right.
And so the idea is that I would go back at the end of this year to see where we stand for next financial year and how things can move forward then. Does that make sense? Is that the way that
It seems to be we're putting things off an awful lot, but we were agreeing to put them off before, so.
It's not that we're putting them off, I think.
Oh, no, not us,
it's
but
in the-
DDC.
Yeah, that, you know, that we can only do so much if DDC are saying they haven't got the capacity, then we have to go back and keep regularly checking in to see when they can.
Yeah, okay. Next one was with regard to.
Sorry, just for information, there is a session coming up, I believe, with DDC, with the mayor, and one of the questions fed in is around this future look. So if we go back to the annual town meeting, the leader of DDC was asked specifically about the vision, and his response was, I don't even know what it is. I'll go away and have an investigation. And then the answer that then came back was, I now know what it is, but we have no plans at the moment. So I think the opportunity with the meeting that's coming up is then, because it is, I think, on the list, is to try and explore that a bit further. Because at the moment I think DDC are not necessarily focused on this at all.
No.
Even though a lot of work and money was spent many years ago under a different administration.
Yeah, right. Are we okay moving on? With regard to the key path, the Ainsley Court proposed ramp, we can cover that later on in the, we do have disability
On the agenda.
on the agenda. We have ongoing proposal by Councillor Chuka, seconded, which is KCC approach to clarify the inconsistent approach with replacing lighting in the town.
I think
That's
from what I understand, because of taking this over, was this to do with the lamps and that DDC had replaced them with a particular more modern type of lamp, and it was trying to get them replaced with the original. But unfortunately, I think again it comes down to cost and resources, and I think it's a no from the Dover District Council side of things.
Right.
So getting them replaced with the original bulbs.
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects, because there's KCC with their street lamps,
Right.
there's also DDC on, for example, the town trail
Yeah.
with their lamps. They both have cost constraints. KCC have previously said to me, and this was the discussion because I've read it in, they have said to me, whilst it's conservation, it's not preservation. So if a light needs to be fixed, they'll make a decision about what light is available and they'll use it, even if it means a heritage lamp is removed and a modern lamp is put in its place. I'm not too sure where we really can go with this.
Can we take this up? Can we sort of say, yeah, this is no longer
unresolved, but
yes.
no longer
It
move
is what
forward.
it is.
Yeah.
There's no point discussing something that we can't. The St Paul's Compass Roads project. I spoke to Carrie. I believe I can speak to Carrie.
Which one?
Yeah. Oh yes. And she says that she's going to approach Town Clerk with regard to presenting where she's at the moment, samples of the material, and a full-scale plan of the compass roads. So she is moving forward with this quite well. So at an appropriate meeting. She had suggested coming to this meeting, as we said, but that was today she suggested that. As I said, no, we can't change things in that short time. So that is ongoing at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, as the town clerk has said, this is an agreement between the contractor, Carrie, and Dover District Council, and so at this present time, Sandwich Town Council hasn't actually got any input into this. We're not actually funding it. The only part that we will get involved with is when it is handed over. So when it's installed, it is due to be handed over to Sandwich Town Council if Sandwich Town Council wishes to accept it as an asset. So at this current basis in time, we're just dependent on the goodwill of Carrie and what have you to update us, but we can't say we don't like this, we don't like that,
No.
when's it happening, or it's taking a long time, because we haven't got any input on it, so just remember that.
Councillor Ripley?
Just as a matter of interest, if Sandwich Town Council decided they didn't want to adopt it as an asset, what happens?
I can answer. It's being installed on Dover District Council land, and Dover District Council are paying for it. They would probably have to just
Keep up with it.
and do whatever like that. But I mean, it depends how you see things. I mean, from my point of view, it's a capital asset, and as long as the outgoings aren't exceedingly high, then it's a bonus for Sandwich Town Council to have. So we would be the owners of it, and as long as there's minimal maintenance to it, which needs to be proved, then I'm quite happy to accept it, as it were. So we have had an agreement from the stonemason to say that she's prepared to continue, I think it was the gilding or what have you, the lettering for a number of years. So as long as future councillors put a budget item into the budget for a minimum of maintenance for it in the future, then it should be okay and tick over.
Right, moving on.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm just going to add what you said is completely right, but I think it also, the offer from Carrie is generous, because I think we should at least know what it is that we are going to inherit in terms of the ongoing maintenance, even if it's minimal, and even if Carrie's given 10 years worth of maintenance, which I think she offers.
She did.
We should at least know, because the design has, I believe, changed along the way. For example, the sets is a good example, because actually they are STC owned sets. The question is, how new are we actually giving into that project now? I'm not sure. Does anybody know? We're giving sets.
Yeah, I could work it out. It's 4 times 8, or it's 32. I think it's 32.
Sorry, I'm going
Number 16 had been.
Yeah,
60
exactly. I was
will
just
take
going to
it.
talk about that.
That's
I was a bit facetious, but 64 was mentioned previously, so it's interesting that 32 is now mentioned.
It
So
might
it's
well
shimmering
be
all the time.
8 between each compass point.
It may be.
Yes, yes. And how many compass points? Yes, yes. Okay.
But obviously, the stonemason will be aware that any sets that are left over after the design has been completed do have to be returned to Sandwich Town Council. So that is good. Yeah.
Right.
So just to clarify, is Carrie then coming to the next H&T meeting?
I think whether the invite will be to the STC or the H&T. She had provided information for me to bring, and I sort of said I would prefer that she actually presented it, otherwise I'm undermining what she's done. I'm second guessing some of the things that she might say. Right, the Network Rail Resilience Forum and KCC Traffic Management. Now this is more Councillor Black's area. I don't know whether we want to, if there's anything we can add to that at the moment.
To say that having some resistance with trying to organise a meeting, I think the concern is that some of these issues, or the majority of issues, was addressed in the letter. But I think the gentleman was on annual leave, so it's been a struggle to get hold of him. And I'm hoping to speak with him soon. So I am still on organising this meeting, but it isn't going as smoothly as I hoped.
Yeah. Right.
Been delayed.
So,
Railway people.
that one at the moment. This with regard to the tourism video. Do we have anything more on that?
The last I checked with the town clerk, and it is still on talks with the BBC around the video, but they are very keen to collaborate, and I think there are discussions going on there. We haven't had any other updates since then.
Sorry,
Yes.
have they not started the video?
I haven't had that update.
Because I thought they were promising it by next, was it spring? And it was going to be taken, and then it was all the work that would be done on cutting and producing the end result, which I thought DDC already said that they were paying for.
Well, I believe that was the conversation, but I've not been given the information,
Right.
the conversation between DDC and
Okay.
the tourism video, and that's the conversation that they've had, so I'm not sure what their agreed setup is, but the last I was told is that the conversations were happening, and I haven't been given a further update since.
Okay.
But I can chase it up again. Is it Councillor Black who's involved in?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, it is. Can we report that to? Sandwich Tree Warden Comprehensive Report. I've been waiting on Nikki to come up with a date for a meeting. We've been talking about mid-September. I'm not pressing her because I know that she has her own, challenges. So, I've basically said as soon as she feels able to give a report, then I'll make myself available. Right, if we can move on back to the agenda, which is are we happy with the action log being moved on from now? Thank you. Oh, right, public participation. 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Now, I don't see any members of the public. I don't know whether our co-opted people would have anything to say as members of the public. No? So, if I can, rather than read everything out, we can move on from that. So there is no request for public participation. Number 7, terms of reference. Members to review the terms of reference of the Heritage and Townscape Committee to ensure the objectives of Disability Exit Strategy Working Group, which now forms part of the Heritage and Townscape Committee, are retained.
So this is just a simple merging of documents that we can use as a jumping point for amending. So I'm, fully open to that. But basically, what I did is I went through the Heritage and Townscape Committee terms of reference, the working group terms of reference, and the terms of reference for Heritage and Townscape, and tried to ensure that there was no overlap. And actually found that at this point, there was just a few statements that could be made, but it's now whether members would like to accept that or to then put forward to STC or to amend that and expand on it.
So should I just read out the role of the committee?
Yes.
That might maybe help. The purpose of the Heritage and Townscape Committee is to be responsible for external matters outward facing to the public and dealing with heritage and townscape, environment, tourism and business development. And where you've got highlighted, from May 2024, the Disability Access Strategy Working Group was merged into the Heritage and Townscape Committee. The Heritage and Townscape Committee now has the role of considering all aspects of improving access for disabled and less physically mobile people throughout the whole of Sandwich District. I don't need to go through membership because that really hasn't changed.
The only changes are that everything else was the agreed Heritage and Townscape Committee.
Right. Okay. And now, do we have to vote
There
on
was
this?
another section.
There's the comments.
Oh, there's
Further down, there's another yellow passage.
that is
And again, it's a very similar wording, so this is what might need expanding on.
Right, I will read out that. This is an addition
Yes.
to, right, this is an addition to the role of the Heritage and Townscape Committee to consider how access across Sandwich can be improved for disabled and less mobile members of the community and visitors. This includes investigating step-free access and or routes to key areas in the Sandwich district, promotion of accessible activities and engaging with Sandwich district residents for whom accessibility is an issue. So this will be added as an extra paragraph describing our role.
And your duties and responsibilities.
Right. So now, do we need to vote on this as a?
I think there's some comments and then,
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Tudor,
Yes, sorry.
got the answer.
So can I first of all thank
Yes.
Chloe for doing this, because I've compared the two as well, so thank you for doing it. But I had firstly a broader comment. By dropping in a couple of sentences or paragraphs, whichever into terms of reference, doesn't mean to say that we will address disability access issues. So the working group existed for a very specific reason, and I'd like to see that somehow within this group we accept the challenge of looking at this particular topic in a proactive manner rather than just saying, well, it's in our terms of reference and if something crops up, we'll do it. So I wouldn't want to do that. So for example, within the group we could look at having a disability access champion as part of the group who actually would be willing to lead within the group. Or we could look at ways in which we actually feature within future meetings discussions specifically. That's the broad comment. It leads on to two specifics. One is that within the working group there was a commitment that in January of each year that they would generate 1 to 3 projects. Now, I would be arguing we should look at taking at least the emphasis of that, and actually as this group at the start of a point within the year, do the same, come up with something that we next focus on. I know the ramp is important, but it's what happens next. And then the other comment I had was what I'd like on the second sentence to expand it a bit more, because specifically within the working group in terms of reference to improving access to buildings owned by STC and STBF, public conveniences, facilities run by charities and commercial enterprises. So that was a specific. I'd like in some sense that being reflected in this, because I think we should be seen as on the front foot in terms of our own buildings. The fact that we're having this down here is a very small example of that. But without doing this, previously there were complaints about where meetings were held. So I would like to see we are challenged as a public body, public authority, to actually look at our own responsibilities, our assets, and do something about that. So they're my two specifics.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor Shuker. I wrote the terms of reference of the Disability Access Strategy Working Group, so I'm very familiar with them. But I do remember that this committee did agree that we would routinely, at every meeting, have an item on disability access. So I think that resolves.
To be reflected in the terms of reference. That's
But we passed a motion.
that was agreed at a previous meeting.
Yes, so if that needs to be in these terms of reference, that should be. I would also support Councillor Shuker's point, and I actually put it in the original terms of reference of the original Disability Access Strategy Working Group, that our own buildings should be accessible, and I'm well aware that they are not. And in particular, I mean, I have actually raised it at council meetings, the fact that we hold council meetings in the council chamber, which is a very pleasant setting, but it is not accessible, particularly when, as frequently happens, we have to use the side door, and that means that we have to go up those stairs. Now, under the previous regime, I did raise this more than once, in fact frequently, because at the time I myself was having trouble getting up those stairs. Fortunately, touch wood, my pacemaker is working perfectly okay at the moment, but there are times when it doesn't, and I have great difficulty in getting up those stairs. And I know that there are other members of the council who can't get up the stairs with ease, but much more particularly, it applies to members of the public. We have to be accessible to members of the public, and we really do have to tackle that. So I would be more than happy to take Councillor Shuker's suggestion that we include something about our own property and accessibility. The other point I would add is that when I was thinking about this with the access, I was, in the original strategy documents, I was also thinking about parents and carers of small children, because pushing buggies around this town is absolutely impossible. And I'll come to a suggestion that has, or some exploratory discussions that Ben and I have been having later when I give the verbal update on the discussions that Ben and I have been having, which also referred to the problems that people have pushing buggies around.
So, just to be clear, I think so far the recommendations for amendments I have are around ensuring that there is reference to improving access to STC properties
And STPF,
and STPF.
because of course the guild rules is not clear what it is.
STC, sorry, and STBF. And that also maybe amending the wording, so not just for disabled members of the public and those that are less mobile, but families with pushchairs, so that there's,
Yes.
it includes
Yes,
everybody.
yes.
Okay.
So can we have the wording aiming for the next meeting?
Yes,
So,
yes,
so that we can, so if we hold back on voting,
I do want to make one point, and I don't want any delay with these terms of reference for this committee to preclude agenda items
It's already
now
been agreed.
and in future H&T meetings on disability access.
It had already been agreed that disability access strategy is a regular item on
Yes.
the agenda at every meeting, so I don't believe that would be an issue, but I will also make sure that's included in the terms of reference.
yeah, yeah, I think, yeah.
Oh, sorry. If we actually know the amendments that have got to be made, we're the ones that voting on them, could we not vote on them tonight instead of waiting until the next meeting and then voting again? Then it's sort of delaying
I think
things.
it's a good point, because actually we need to take it to STC in any case, and if not,
Yeah.
then 2 months from this meeting, and
Exactly.
then the next
And then
meeting.
that's what I mean. And if the amendments can be read out, we will agree with them.
Okay.
If we can have that just read out.
So I have here that you wish to add to the terms of reference that a minute item is on every single agenda under disability access strategy. Is that, you have all that wording? That the reference to improving access to STC and STBF properties in the area, and that we expand the wording to include families who are also pushing wheelchairs. Who are pushing pushchairs. And then the other one was, I think there was one more.
Yes, it's about the access to buildings owned by, and there's almost a lift from those terms of reference for the working group. You can put in as an additional sentence in that second paragraph.
Okay.
Are we okay with that?
Yeah, so I'd like to propose accepting those terms and conditions with the amendments that have been raised this evening.
Yes, can we have a second? Yeah, a second. Can we vote on this, please? Yes, that's
Do
unanimous.
we want to then immediately get it to STC, the next STC
I
as
think
well?
so, yes, I think so.
Yes.
Right, and we've moved on in terms of reference to number 8, disability access strategy. Councillor Understand, can you actually
Yes, I just want to
comment on this first?
I'm very sorry. Right. After the last Heritage Townscape committee meeting, I met with Ben Garrett and we talked about developing a strategy together. I should add that there has always been a strategy since 2021, heritage strategy for the town team, and we did have, as a disability access strategy working group, a whole series of meetings, but things have moved on a bit. So the main two projects that Ben and I discussed were, first of all, the question of a ramp between the quay path into the courtyard of Ainsley Court. And this has been a project which has been ongoing and frustrated, I have to say, for 3 years now. The Ainsley Court Residence Company has given permission for such a ramp to be built over 2 steps. There is already a budget, and I've managed to get a budget of £2,500 every year for the last 3 years. None of it, although a very tiny proportion, was spent removing the bar across 2 bollards at the end of Signpost and Milk Avenue. But that's all that's been spent on it. So there is money there for a ramp, and I have to say that I'm somewhat puzzled as to why it's still a problem. And I would like the committee to support the development of this ramp and for work to start on that, and I think Ben is in agreement. The second aspect that Ben and I discussed, and Ben may wish to add other projects which he referred to in our discussion, was the possibility of a pedestrian bridge. Now this is a major project, obviously, and would be a costly one. But it would be a supplement to the existing toll bridge, which is not suitable for pedestrian traffic or even bicycle traffic. And it's particularly, it promotes a particular hardship for people who are reliant on mobility scooters and wheelchairs who live on Willowbank. And we both know of somebody who's actually trapped on Willowbank. She can't get into Sandwich, although she lives in a flat in Willowbank. She cannot get into Sandwich on her own, and there must be other people in a similar position on Willowbank. And it's also in the context of the permission that has been given, planning permission for 500 houses, which means at least 1,500 additional people at the south end of Discovery Park. And many of those households will be families with small children, there'll be older people, there'll be a whole range of demographics living there. And if they are to come into Sandwich, they really do need safe access into Sandwich. And if they can't get into Sandwich, they will shop in Ramsgate, Westwood Cross, they will send their children northwards and not into Sandwich to school. So there is a really serious context for the development of a pedestrian bridge, which could also be accessed by people on bicycles, my view is. Anyway, Ben and I had a discussion about this and decided that we should try and get Sir Roger Gale, who is our MP, involved. So we wrote to Sir Roger, and he said yes, he would like to meet with us. And we met with him at the end of August, and I'm afraid that what I've just done is made certain that I cannot read to you his letter. Oh yes, I can. Here we go. It was a very constructive meeting, and he was very sympathetic to the view that what is needed in the long run, and urgently also, is a pedestrian bridge. He raised some questions, and the two main ones, and I can't read you his letter, unfortunately, which followed up the meeting, was to discover who owns the land on both sides, because that is material, and clearly, and to find a tame pro bono engineer who could give us as an estimate, a ballpark estimate, what kind of design would be needed, and also what the cost implications would be. And in his follow-up letter, he addressed both those questions. And unfortunately, I was going to read it to you, and I just managed to excerpt it. I can't. So, what I'm asking is that, and I also asked Roger at the time for his permission to tell this committee that we've started this discussion, and he said yes, he was perfectly happy for me to do so, but that I should emphasise that these were exploratory discussions in very, very early stage, so nothing may come of it. And clearly, if something were to come of it, it would be an extremely expensive project, and we would have to find funds from a great number of sources. And one of the sources, of course, that I have in mind is the developers of that large estate which will be built at the southern end of Discovery Park. But we need to talk to them, and I think Ben and I both agreed that Sir Roger is probably the right person to try and initiate that kind of discussion. I have put in train questions concerning the ownership of the land, and I think I have a pretty clear idea who does own the land. Certainly, the land between the bridge and the toll bridge and the White Bridge seems to be owned by EEC. On the other side of the same stretch of the river, the land is almost certainly owned by the owner of Willowbank, Mr. McGurk. And I've also made inquiries about land elsewhere, but it also seems to me that this is an obvious inquiry for the property manager, who appears to have the skills to be able to find out that kind of information really quite quickly. And I've also put in place, asked a tame engineer, a pro bono engineer, to think about a design and the costing implications of such a development. And he said he could think about it in October. So what I'm asking the committee, I don't know, Ben, if you want to add any other projects which...
the only thing I would say was that Sir Roger we did discuss other options. There could be possibilities of other options, like adapting the toll bridge itself and approaching UK Heritage, whoever's in charge of the toll bridge. That could be adapted, because it's been adapted before to take a bus. I think it takes 7.5 tonnes. Is it that what that bridge can take?
Yeah.
So it's been adapted before. So it could be adapted itself. That might be a cheaper way of doing it, and he would explore other avenues as well, because there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat sometimes. To make a safe journey across there for families, elderly, disabled people, there's a big part of the community where it's not the safest crossing in the world. And obviously he brought up a couple of examples in Kent, around 40 people have lost their lives in those sort of situations, and the things that had been done before, so it can be done.
Yes.
So there was other ways that we discussed about it, as well as a bridge, because we did think that probably that was the most dearest way.
Yes, but also the safest way. I mean, I can't see English Heritage doing it in saying, giving permission for any changes. Various people want it.
May I ask, we're at the moment doing quite a lot of work on the traffic light situation
Yes.
over the bridge. We also have a traffic problem in Sandwich, where the bridge is being used as a cut through. It's not people coming really to spend money in Sandwich, but I know some of them do. But can we not have, even if it was a temporary situation, where there is a time-limited traffic light signal that allows pedestrians to walk across the bridge safely? Because surely that is something which can't take thousands of pounds and should be easily achievable. And actually it might actually resolve several issues that I believe the town has. And it's not just disabled, as you said, it's not just disabled people. You know, it's anyone who's walking across that bridge. You've got a parent, a child, and a buggy.
Shopping bag.
Yeah, and a shopper. You cannot do it. So that might irritate a lot of people who want to fly across the bridge. But it would give us, or it would give everybody, safe access if the traffic lights are changed.
Can I reply to that?
That's right.
I don't know, Carol, if you remember, but the Disability Access Working Group did talk
Yes.
to and asked Sue Chandler,
Yes.
as the KCC councillor, to ask about staggering the traffic.
Yes.
Because that does seem to be a very obvious and simple solution, and it would also help with crossing between one side of the high street over to the Bell Hotel side.
Yes.
And the answer came back was it was impossible because there would be too much build-up of traffic in Strand Street. I mean, obviously we can try again, but I don't think Councillor Chandler will help us
No.
because she's already come back with an extra.
We don't know.
But it's possible that maybe Roger Gale.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think Roger Gale, because sorry, touching you. Councillor Tompkins.
Yeah,
I'm
just a couple of points. I would have thought a town planner would be the type appropriate person to look at options for that, you know, in terms of that very specific area and what the challenges are, and look at it more holistically.
Yes.
Also, I thought that the Discovery Park would have a vested interest because a lot of people travel in.
Yes.
You see, I come back from night shifts and I see them walking over from the station or the Bell Hotel. I know we've got the travel lodge now, but it's used as a. I would have thought they would be key stakeholders, really.
Well, one of the things I did as a briefing document for Roger Gale before we met with him was I looked at the funding for the Guildhall forecourt, and Discovery Park did make a contribution to that. So you're quite right. I mean, there are different. One can think of different ways of persuading different organisations.
And the other point was just about electric bikes becoming much more common, and whether they then count as traffic or should be part of the pedestrian type.
I mean,
They're definitely more.
That's a discussion down the road.
About how they're involved in that thing, because there's a slight difference to electric.
Councillor Rookwood and Mr. Head.
Just to throw a comment in here, my understanding of health and safety regulations are that they overarch everything else. That's the most important thing in terms of
Duty.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Health and safety oversees every other consideration. So if there is a health and safety aspect to anything, that's more important than conservation issues or anything else.
That's helpful.
Mr. Head.
Yes, it occurs to me that the McGurk side of at the bridge, there's planning permission for a hotel, a small hotel and restaurant, just beside the bridge.
Yes.
Now that could either be a hindrance to a plan for a bridge, or it could be of some
Well,
benefit
it could be.
if the builders and landowners could integrate a footbridge
Yes.
into their plans. But I don't know how advanced their plans are. Nothing's happened for 2 or 3 years.
I should say that it's not just an ordinary footbridge. It would have to be a swing bridge. So.
Yes.
And I've actually been looking at examples of swing, what they call movable bridges. And there are some wonderful ones. I mean, we could have a really iconic, you know, world-class design. We could have, and it would be part of Sandwich's attractions.
So it's pretty pressing into.
So I'm looking at a little bit of a party pooper, I suppose. So this is the objective statement rather than a personal statement, but we need to be convinced there is a need. So whilst we know there are individuals and practices, what we're not clear yet on is the Discovery Park development, should it get off the ground. There is a real possibility that a number of the properties, should they be built, may actually be used for people working on the site who may not have much inclination to come to the town. In any case, so all of that is the unknown. You can't build, and I'm talking from a business case perspective. The first business case question is, what is it you're trying to address? So that's one thing. And the second thing is that I'm sure you've already found out, then, don't underestimate the cost of a item across a bridge that has to be moved should a boat want to pass it. We are talking millions here, I think. So I'm just being sober about things. Let's not run away with looking for a solution if we don't have a business argument for doing that, because we'll spend time looking at the shiny end game rather than actually what are we trying to address.
I should say that the first question that Roger Gale asked was, what use would such a bridge have? I mean, apart from making the general point that at the moment people are at risk when they're on foot crossing that bridge, particularly when buses come by, when we made the point that there is going to be this enormous development, then he really did sit up and listen. But of course, you know, we can't force people to come into Sandwich, but they're not going to come into Sandwich except by car. And that's going to create additional problems in Sandwich. So I agree that clearly there has to be a business case. And I also agree that we are talking something very costly. But we do want to have a ballpark. I mean, the Guildhall forecourt costs just over £1 million. So it's not impossible. It really isn't.
Sorry.
Just to go back on a point that Carol made, and obviously Councillor Ripley made there about the through road and health and safety. Probably the biggest problem I see is we've seen the problem at the moment. The toll bridge is closed and it's anarchy on the bypass.
Yes.
So without doubt, people use it as the through road, and that's what makes it so dangerous.
Yes.
Because I drive from Thanet to there to work. And people are charging along there. Now I know Sandwich, so I do 15, 20 miles an hour when I get to there, but people are flying along there. And then if the buildings are built, the houses, and people with children, let's think of them before the elderly, are going to go to the school in Sandwich, and they're going to walk there, then with that whole way of walking there would be dangerous to the school. Which goes back to the health and safety side of things. That is, I think, should be the point made about the whole, whichever way it's broke. And I don't believe a bridge is just the answer, like Pelican Cross, anything could be the answer.
I've got my hand up.
Sorry, you can
just with regard to your comment about people using sandwiches, essentially a sort of rat run. Anybody in Woodensborough and that area, not going all the way to Ash, to avoid using Sandwich, has to go through this tiny little lane called Saunders Lane, which is a one track with mud, and it's unusable mostly. The alternative is to go further into Ash, or all the way into Ash and do a bend back on itself, which is dangerous. So I think coming from Woodensborough, the solution there, of course, is to have a junction onto the bypass. That would take up a lot of traffic away from the bridge. There is a holistic view here. There are so many things that we can fix which has knock-on effects throughout Sandwich. Councillor Carter and then Councillor Ripley.
I was just going to briefly, two quick things. I was just going to say, I guess nobody else in this room would know, but there was a councillor called Councillor Dick Perry, Richard Perry, who was on the council for a large number of years. Unfortunately, he's recently passed away. And he actually, to do with the traffic lights, he chased that measure a number of times. And at the time we had a Kent County councillor called Leyland Ridings. And you might know Dick Perry, aren't you? Sorry, beg your pardon, Carol.
Dick Perry and Leyland.
Oh, did you? Oh, sorry. And Dick Perry really chased to get the phasing of the lights done. I won't also, or should I mention that he also wanted the one-way system turned around the other way, but that's by the by. But with the traffic lights, so it's not really Councillor Chandler that's saying it can't be done. It couldn't be done 15 years ago, and it was refused then. So that's item number one. Item number two, any development that's put in under the planning regulations that we have in the UK here, there's now very strict regulations about the passage of people and bicycles and vehicles, and there has to be accessible passage for people to come. And I quote an example is the development on Woodensborough Road. I don't know if anybody remembers, but when the planning went in for that, they had to provide cycling and pedestrian access to the town centre here. And if that means building a bridge, then they would have had to have built a bridge. It would have been part of the planning regulations. So really, before we all start putting our own designs in, we could see what happens on that site, because, as Councillor Anderson said, it could fall due to the developers, particularly if they're putting 500 housing, that X amount of money has to go towards either the adaptation of the current bridge or some sort of proposal for a future bridge. And that's what I would like to see.
Councillor Ripley and then George.
I was just going to enlarge on the health and safety aspect of things. If that is the overriding consideration above all others, then surely we should be pushing that aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's in terms of making the current bridge more accessible to pedestrians and wheelchairs and pushchairs and all the rest of it. Surely we have a big fist really on that side to push for this improvement of facilities for people.
And Mrs. George, and then if we can move on back to Councillor Anderson with regard to both her proposals for approaching an engineer and what was the other element of this?
And the land ownership.
And the land ownership, the potential for approaching our new employee.
Well, I think I probably have from Councillor Gray a pretty good idea of the land ownership. He seems to have, but I think the property manager will be able to.
But so that we can take this forward to the next meeting, actually having moved forward a little bit at least.
Right, there's three things now, because if we go back to council, to Leyland Ryder saying that it wasn't possible, he also said that there wasn't a traffic issue or a lorry issue in the town, and we proved categorically that there is, and there was. In terms of just going back to the disability issue, I do have two things, because we were also promised from the previous meetings that we had that they would definitely have a good look at the hatchback lines that would enable people to safely cross from the quay side to the, what I call the toll bridge, or the Crispin side of that bridge. and they haven't done that either, and that is something that is quite simple. It actually stops. If you have a pedestrian on that, the traffic has to allow the pedestrian to cross, and they've not come back and done that.
Sorry,
The last thing
can I
is
just
that,
clarify for minutes who promised that?
well, that went through to Sue Chandler, to Councillor Chandler. It was in, we've probably got minutes where we asked for that, and she was, she didn't foresee a problem with it, and was taking that back to KCC. But of course we had COVID and all sorts, and I'm sure things have got a bit lost in the ether there. And my other query is, I don't think we can forget the issue of the ramp that goes into Ainsley
I
Court.
was just about to go back
Sorry,
to that
because
and
that
say,
really is.
once we finish with the
Okay.
bridge, we need to go back to the ramp.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else relevant to the bridge that we've not covered? And I think where we're going to leave this at the moment is Councillor Anderson is going to look at land ownership, and you have a pro bono engineer who will give an idea
Yes.
that we can take forward to the next committee meeting. If there's anything else that we should approach, possibly with regard to the lighting, because name's just gone out of my mind. Our KCC representative, Sue Chandler. Sue Chandler is expressing an opinion, clearly an opinion, and I don't think that's relevant. I think it's more than that.
She did say she'd approach the officer.
If she's going to approach, can we press her on approaching, that she is going to approach the officer? I don't
I
know.
think she did. I
Yes.
think she said she did.
Right.
I would like to get the support of the committee just to continue, for me to reply to Roger Gale, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to read you his letter, saying that the committee supports further exploration of this
Yes. Can
particular project.
we vote on this? I will propose it, but basically my proposal is that we ask Councillor Anderson to approach
And Ben Garrett.
and Ben Garrett to continue the approach to things are just going in and out. Roger Gale. I'm just concentrating too much. So Roger Gale on the matter of certainly access between one side of the Stour and the other on a general basis, so that Councillor Anderson can freely approach it with the backing of the committee. Is anybody going to second that? And vote on this, please?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining.
Yeah, I think I'll abstain at this point.
Right.
Can you say why?
I don't want this council to get entrenched in a massive multi-million pound bridge building activity that would take us away from perhaps helping people that are...
Sorry, is it about, necessarily about bridge building? Isn't it about making a safe crossing from one side of the Stour to the other? That's the basic.
That comes under KCC.
Yes,
That's
it's
a KCC
but
remit.
it's, I see this as
not
approaching, not that we should do anything, but the approach from Councillor Anderson is to emphasise there is something needing to be done. Whoever's going to do it, but not necessarily us, but that is something that the committee says something needs to happen.
So my abstention is back to what I said earlier, that I don't see the evidence of the next stage conversation that's being suggested. So that's where I am today. There's nothing to convince me that the demand is there that would necessitate what needs to happen.
In that case, on what?
Only one of.
Oh, right. Right. On what level is Councillor Anderson approaching Sir Roger Gale?
Well, if we vote, I think she may get to the majority anyway, so she's got the committee support.
Yes, it's just so we understand this. So we can have a little vote on this, please.
Put your hand up as well.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So
It's
that's
carried.
carried. There you go, you got it. Could you make a note of the two abstentions?
Already, thank you.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of the ramp.
The ramp.
Great.
Do we have any comments? I have a comment on the ramp, but is anybody else going to comment on the ramp?
Depends what the update is. So you gave
Well,
us.
the update is that nothing's happening.
That was the previous one. I heard it earlier.
So if there's not
I might have forgotten
any
names.
alternatives,
If I
have
can-
one alternative.
If I can propose that we have a budget, I can see the challenges of the Sandwich Town Council putting a ramp on somebody else's property, even if they agree that Sandwich Town Council may do that. However, they are willing that Sandwich Town Council could do that, but that doesn't solve I think there's a juxtaposition here of can liabilities, who's doing what, it can get complicated. Can we, as Sandwich Town Council, provide a grant to the owners of the flats, the freeholder, who is willing, and say, we will pay for it, or we will give a grant that will cover that amount of money needed to install a ramp?
I would need to check.
Yes, that was going to be my next question. Can we do that?
I don't know off the top of my head if I'm honest. It would be something I'd need to go and investigate.
Yeah.
But that would mean that we would devolve responsibility for getting it all organised to the Ainsley Court Residence Company, which, I would think would be really unreasonable ask from them.
But we've been 3 years with nothing happening.
Well, that's because we've done nothing, and there's been constant frustration. But I don't think we can ask them to do it. I mean, because it's a public good. It's not a private good for the Ainsley Court residents. It's a public good for the community as a whole. And they would have to make the effort, use the time, even though we pay for it. It's still a business.
Can I just ask, I think I've lost the plot here, but have we now established that the pathway that looks different to the rest of the area is definitely a public pathway, that one on the right-hand side? Is that a public pathway? Because if it is, then there must be some responsibility.
It's not.
It isn't, definitely
not.
not.
It's all lanes you call.
That's the issue, is that I think initially the thought was that it was a public right of way.
Well, they
They thought
it
it
was.
was.
But we did check that and it is not.
I thought we had the wrong pathway.
Then the wrong part.
Oh, right.
But they did think originally that there is a public footpath in the relevant place. But it turns out that it's not a public footpath. So maybe it has to be made into a public footpath.
That's correct.
There's no alternative area.
No, it's that if you go into the Ainsley Court courtyard, there's a pathway which is tiled in a different colour.
Yes.
And there must have been an intention originally for it to be a public footpath, but presumably nobody bothered to make it a public footpath. So maybe it's necessary to get that area of different coloured tiling declared public footpath. And then, if that were the case, what would be the position with us building a ramp? Because the key path is owned, as far as I know, by KCC. So, and the public footpath would be owned by KCC, would it not? No?
I believe so, yes.
So then, if we make a little ramp, which we pay for, how does that work?
Councillor Chief.
So, using the plots, good analogy. So I think we haven't got our act together well enough to actually understand what it is. We know what we want to do, but we haven't actually got the building blocks in terms of understanding the estate there, where we want to put the item. So I think your suggestion is a reasonable one, Simon, that there are complexities around, in effect, what we're saying is, you, to the Ainsley Court, you want a ramp, we will pay for it and provide the item. If they were fighting for it and they came to us, that's a very different relationship. So managing a relationship where we're giving them something across without their project mentality from themselves, it's not without risk. So do we understand the lay of the land, literally? And if we do, then we deal with that as appropriate. So there's been a suggestion that we make it into a public path. There's a suggestion that it's all owned by private organisations. So I'm confused.
I would suggest that the option of turning it into a public footpath, unless Ainsley Court said you may have it, even then, I think we're looking at years.
Yes. And cost.
Yeah, so to actually turn that into a public footpath. Councillor, sorry.
Well, just briefly, I think if Kent County Council declares the public footpath with or without the agreement of the owners, all the public footpaths in the country belong to the landowner. It's just that people walk on it. And in fact, when it comes to stiles and gates, the landowner has to maintain it.
Yes.
So it's not a case of making it, in quotes, publicly owned footpath. It would simply be a public footpath.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, because we haven't lost the plot, we're actually going over what we've actually discussed before, which we said, what about making a public footpath? And Keith Evans correct. So Kent County Council could never buy the land. All they could do is, which is I said last time, is they could apply for something called a way leave. And once they've got a legal way leave for the public to traverse that bit of land, then Kent County Council could be petitioned to put a ramp in. But actually, now going back to what Councillor Mallet said, that's actually the best option is Councillor Mallet's option, because Ainsley Court Management Limited, it is their land, it is their steps, and if they wanted to put a ramp in there, Kent County Council couldn't stop them if they wanted to. So actually Councillor Mallet's suggestion is probably the most positive suggestion this evening. So, and basically I would agree with it up to the provision of how much money it is, but at this present point in time we could say to Ainsley Court, here is £2,500, which we know is in the budget currently for this project, and we could say we would like for you to put in a ramp on your own land, and they can do that. They can actually do that on their own land.
So that's just back to my point, is that the level of commitment that they are indicating, as opposed to more of a classic commitment that it's a good idea, we support it, but just get on and sort it out. So that's why I'm not sure about the relationship. They are very different relationships.
They are, and it's the former. We as the Disability Access Strategy Working Group initiated the discussion with them, wrote to them saying, what do you think? They wrote back saying, we think it's a good idea, and they repeated that they think it's a good idea, but that they didn't initiate the idea, and it's not specifically because Ainsley Court residents want that ramp, it's because we want that ramp, so that it's easier for people on mobility scooters to move from the key car park
Would it be
into the
useful
centre of town.
just for me to investigate just even the possibility, because it might be that it's just something that cannot technically be done. I don't know without speaking to the clerk and having a look at the financial regulations. So if I go away and investigate whether or not the possibility of giving the money
As a
in that
grant,
way can actually happen, then there's worth a discussion. Otherwise, if it isn't, then we'll be arguing something that can't necessarily happen.
And if it is possible, and we approach them and they say, yeah, okay, just go to the builder, we'll put some concrete down, done deal.
Exactly.
And we fixed it.
In parallel, we can have a conversation with agency court.
Yes, because it might well be that they say, yes. And if they do,
But then I do think, you know, to land them with having to organise it,
mm,
and then we do
Would
going
be
to offer,
happy to
we
come
can help.
to a meeting and to discuss it.
Yes.
yes. If I just say, I mean, I have about 200 metres of footpath on my land, and I put money into making it accessible as much as possible, even though it's mud. And if somebody came to me and said, here's a grant towards buying more shingle, more sharp sand, what have you, I'd say, yeah, great, I will do it. That's
For me, that is the key question, is how much effort they will be willing to put into it. Because if we do the work and install it, I would suggest there's still some therefore some responsibility for us in terms of the workmanship, any subsequent issues that may occur. So that's what I'm trying to be very clear. It's drawing the line that if we have a grant, that's very simple, straightforward, and if they're happy to then take it forward, as opposed to us delivering the solution, there may then be some subsequent.
I would agree. We can't deliver it.
We can't. This council isn't constituted to delivering it.
No.
Grant,
But we can possibly.
It could be possible that you could have certain stipulations in your grant agreement of a certain level of, you know, quality that is signed off by, you know, there are things, conversations that we could be had, but I think if the actions are that, I'll find out how that's possible, if we can do that, and then maybe if a representative from Agency Court is happy to attend the meeting to then discuss it in detail, so that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah.
Can we, do we need a vote on this, or can we?
It's an action, I think, that
Yes.
is, if, I think, I'm not sure they would require a vote if I'm just
Yeah.
researching this.
Yeah, I think we would just
If you're-
ask you to.
We've already got the initiative on the agenda, so it's just an action to the initiative.
That's right.
Right.
Right, now anything else on the disability access strategy?
Well, I think
Could I just ask Ben a question? Because it was an Alzheimer's walk at the weekend, wasn't there? I wasn't aware of that. I don't know how it's communicated, but I would have liked to have seen the town council represented on that. So it just might be something for the future. I'm not sure how it manifested itself, but I see.
It's a memory walk, but it's done every year. The
Yes.
co-op organise that. It's the co-op and our dementia services. And it goes, because we don't raise money for ourselves, you raise money for the Alzheimer's Society. That's why, because the co-op have done it. But obviously they team up with us and trustees, one of the councillors was there anyway, Jeff Rakeman, who's one of our trustees was there and stuff. A lot of people in the local Rotary go and support it. We keep the numbers to about 40 people because then it becomes too many people all around Saturday, etc. So we walk around there. It's also good for me to take any more disability issues in because I walk around with our chairman who was in a mobility scooter and then he can only do half of it. So for obvious reasons.
Yes.
So but obviously it would be I'll make aware of it next year, but we'll be picking the dates out. But yeah, it's just something that the local club do. We do just to raise money for Alzheimer's.
Having that similar type of issues within my own situation is just, it was.
Yeah, we had a couple of clients come along as well, so we try to keep it to around 40 people that we know that will come and stuff like this lot. So, because obviously you'd like to publicise it and get a lot more people there, then we have 3 people do be traffic warden, etc., to guide people around safely. But if you got out of hand, it might be
I have actually now got Roger Gale's letter. But, do you want me to read it out?
Can we have it? I think we can just manage that and then we can move on to the
He says, Dear Claire, thanks very much indeed for arranging a useful meeting with Ben Garrett to initially explore the possibilities of a pedestrian footbridge across the Stour and Sandwich. As soon as you've been able to establish the ownership of the land on both sides of the river, which are of course absolutely key to any such project, we will, if that is not in itself a blot to the whole concept, then have to see if collectively we could find an expert in bridge engineering who might be able to give us a ballpark idea of the kind of costs that we might be looking at. This again may be prohibitive, but at this stage I don't want to put a wet blanket on the idea. So I think I did an adequate summary before. So
Yes.
but in the interest of transparency, now say exactly.
If we can move on now to the number 9, VE Day, beacons and lights of peace. As we're sort of moving on in time, if I can just sort of cut to the quick, so to speak. The decision required that we're looking at 2 councillors to be sought to lead on organising the town council's VE Day celebrations and to provide regular reports back to STC on progress. So, now whether this should be passed on to the main council meeting so that everybody has an opportunity to raise their hand. I don't know. Oh, so we have one
My suggestion was that this is that 2 volunteers are requested from people, I hope this won't offend anybody, that have event planning experience. Now, I say this on the knowledge that Councillor Marie did say that he would put his name forward for this previously, and for somebody like Councillor Marie or Councillor Mallet or what ones have we got?
Councillor Wiles is getting
Councillor Wiles, indeed, ones that are event management. Oh wait, we need Councillor Morehouse here.
Yes.
Now, I put him on as chair as CEO. The only reason I'm saying that is because they have the skills and the experience and the knowledge, and most importantly, the contacts. So if you want a group of Morris men to do little sea shanties while the beacon's being lit, the event people would most likely be able to assist with that, and they would know about things like licences and parking and stewarding and things like that. But anyway, that's just my proposal. I would like to see people that have already got the skills and knowledge to do that, but of course it's open for anybody to put their name forward.
And there's complete silence.
I don't mind raising my hand to certainly insist, and I've also spoken to Town Clerk and said that I will certainly assist. I think we all have to bear in mind, and this is something that in the groups that I'm in, we saw for the D-Day celebrations, many towns approaching us and say, can you come to our town or village and bring a vehicle, present, display, what have you. But every single town and every single village is doing this. So we have to bear that in mind and consider this is most likely going to be a sandwich thing. And keeping that in mind, I think it could work. I think it could work very well. But I think we have to think that laterally. We can't just sort of say to somebody else, come and do this. So that's the tack I will be taking.
I'm sorry, the secondary thing that I just wanted to say, and this comes direct from the town clerk, is that any future events or initiatives or anything that is put forward by any councillors that has got any financial implications must be bid for. So the town clerk has drawn up a pro forma, and if anybody has got anything, you want to paint the lamp standards in the town pink, that's fine, you can do that, but you've got to apply to undertake that and get both Sandwich Town Council support and to get it put into the financial requirements for our bid next year for the budgets rather. So I just want to make that clear. Town clerk asked me to raise that tonight. So for instance, the E-Day, if Sandwich Town Council was going to assist with this event going forward, which hopefully they will be, then we need to submit a request for X amount of funding in next year's budget, and that has to be in before October.
Which
No, there's
I thought it was November, possibly, if it's October.
Well, yeah,
It emphasises even
the
more the
latest.
point I was going to make, which is if we go to a meeting, if we leave it to, for example, a full town council meeting to have a discussion again, because this material has been previously submitted to the full town council. I much prefer if there is actually an approach made to the likely suspects to offer the opportunity to do this, because what would need to come into the full town council meeting is a proposal on what the event might, because if you look at the material, it's something like 20, 30, 40 pages of all sorts of things. Yeah. So distill that into what the sandwich offer might be, because that then will have a price tag attached to it. But if you just come to the budget process, and I've seen the form that Town Clerk is suggesting, it needs some meat on the bones. It's not, we like X number of pounds because we're going to do an event. It's more about
I don't mind proposing.
Sorry, may I just ask a question then, just listening to what you're saying? So are we saying that for any application for funding next year, whether that be from Sandwich Town Council or the Tollbridge Fund, we have to apply?
This is internal.
This is purely internal,
Yeah.
okay. So this is not something you're changing?
No,
Okay.
no, this isn't grant.
No.
I did say in my little diatribe a minute ago that councillors putting any initiatives or suggestions or anything else forward need to apply in advance internally. So.
Thank you.
Right. I'm happy to take it on, but I will present ideas. Whether they go to the Sandwich Town Council or whether they go direct to yourself as mayor, but I'll come up with a list of possibilities that, with an idea of a price, because I'm doing this for other events anyway. So
I'll speak to the town clerk and get you a more clarification on the dates and the timelines, so you don't miss it.
I mean, ultimately, we'll have to come to full town council for any financial decision in any case.
Bearing in mind we are going to be, if we're finished with the E-Day, we're going to be combining the scoping and action log for the next one, unless there's anything on the scoping documents that people have that they want to raise. Councillor Chuka does, and considering that we have, time is passing, then I would suggest we leave that until the next meeting, because the whole nature of the scoping and the action is that it carries on meeting by meeting. Councillor Chuka.
Yes, so just on my project, I've completed it. So I've surveyed the extent of the town trail I identified in the original scoping document, 106 items. What I will be doing next is using pro forma to bid for some money for next year, a small amount, to address some of the inadequacies in some of the street furniture. But before I do that, we'll also liaise with DDC, because what we need is their permissions, for example, to varnish a bench that nobody's varnished for 20 years. And we're not going to become guerrilla varnishers, if they exist. Yes, so there are a number of items that are on the town trail element I've done that, all the street lamps need to be painted, but that will not be down to us. So I will be liaising. So my next phase is going live from my project, is I'm going to engage with DDC and try and work a way in which we can either get them to do some stuff, or equally they might even give us some of the materials to do stuff ourselves, so like graffiti kits, things like that, that might take 3 months for the EPC to get around to. We might be able to, if we've got the kit, just to go out to a waste bin that's been targeted and clean it up. So project done in terms of what I set out to do, but there is the next stage, which is to do something with it.
Thank you. I think that's other areas we've covered. The only one was slow ways walking, whether Councillor Anderson wanted to.
Well, I haven't done anything.
Okay. Right, if we can move on, and we can move on to the final number 11, items for information only, not to be discussed now. If there's anything that we should be raising at the next meeting, anybody has anything that should be on the agenda for the next vote of the council?
Could I have something on the next meeting, heading called Sandwich Elephant?
Sandwich Elephant, next meeting. There we go.
Exciting.
Good. Right, I think we've reached the end. And if we don't
Enough elephants.
Looking at the scoping document, I mean, I'm quite interested in these bike racks. Because,
I'm sure we will revert back to bike racks.
Did you want to take that on from me?
No, I don't.
You forced me into a confession.
You're meant to tell the rest too.
Okay, so you forced me into a confession, Councillor Anderson. Apart from some, I've undertaken quite a lot of photography, so when I've been in and around the town, I've been taking pictures of the issues that occur every single weekend in the town like that. But due to, I didn't realise that due to the role of not only mayor, because obviously I'm knowledgeable about that, but something called Speaker of the Simples, nobody told me, because of course it hasn't happened since 2005, that I would have to be organising a massive national event for Upper Duke of York's this year. So unfortunately I've not got any further at all, so I'm very sorry about that. And
But
if
maybe
anything,
somebody, I mean, it's not me,
yeah,
but maybe somebody else, because I do think the whole issue of bikes in the town, and I think
Yeah.
we should have more of them, but we
Yeah.
don't know how to cope with them.
no, that's correct.
So I do think it's important.
Yeah, and I'm very passionate about it, as you know, on my bicycle here tonight, and it's something that, if I revert back to being a councillor and have more time, I would be straight on it straight away. So, but this year it's I've got several hats to wear. So,
Right. I think it's appropriate that it remains on the scoping and
indeed,
action
I do.
because it will keep coming in as a reminder. So, if we're okay, going on to item 12, which is date and time of next meeting, 13th November 2024. And I think we can say this is meeting.
Sorry, what's the time?
It is.
2008.
Thank you.
I'll just go and press the button.
13th.